Good morning. Welcome to another Sunday morning sketch. This is Eric Whalen from Super Secret Project X. And this morning, I'm going to choose one of my favorite, I think he would be considered sort of a ridiculous character. I enjoy him. I think he's wonderfully ridiculous in that way that only characters from JoJo's Bizarre Adventures can be. This morning I'm doing Polnareff from JoJo's Stardust Crusaders. Many people used to not know about JoJo's. Now that they finally put some of it on TV and up on Netflix and stuff, we're getting more and more people. I still like to assume most people don't know a whole lot about JoJo's. Most American people, anyway. I started with JoJo's back in the, I think, roughly mid to late 90s, and they had the OVA series for the Stardust Crusaders, and it was almost like a crazy revelation as to what entertainment can be like. It's very similar to like American superhero stuff in many ways. It's the boys action cartoon stuff that Japan does, like Fist and Dragon Ball Z. And I still like Fist of the North Star quite a bit, but as the years have gone on, I've started really, I think, to appreciate JoJo's a little bit more. It's because of all of the conflicts you get in JoJo's, you rarely get an exact repeat. With Fist, you can get some different results from time to time, but there's a lot of exploding villains and people falling apart and, you know, bashing and crushing and, you know, fun stuff. One of the reasons why I kind of rag on Dragon Ball Z a little bit, there's a lot of repetition. I'm not a fan of repetition, so that makes it a little hard for me. With JoJo's, on the other hand, they kind of went out of their way to make almost every single conflict seriously different. They got a bunch of giant, muscly, punchy, kicky dudes, and then they find every potential or every way to not have them kick or punch anything because of the way the conflict ends up happening. There's a bunch of different kinds of heroes in JoJo's. Polnareff is considered to be basically one of the psychic heroes, using a thing called a stand. It's called a stand because it is literally your psychic power standing next to you. So they kind of like psychically emit an entire other character out of their being, and that character has like superpowers and stuff. Yes, it is a little ridiculous, but it actually works out really well in the series. The idea being is that if you don't have psychic powers, you don't see anything. And so when one of these things sets something on fire, blows something up, it looks like the psychic powers that we're used to seeing, you know, stuff levitating, blah, blah, blah. In their case, if they are psychic, they literally are seeing all of the crazy, wacky mayhem going on with, like, you know, with Polnareff here, his psychic embodiment is called Silver Chariot, and it's literally a big silver knight-looking thing with like a fencing sword. And he is not a brilliant character, nor is he really bright. That's actually why I kind of like him, because there's a lot of like really smart kind of dudes in the series, even though it's like a big muscle series. There's a lot of like kind of smart dudes in it, and with him, he's kind of the dumb dude, which is, to me, balance it out, right? Because that's kind of the stereotype of what you think of boys' cartoons, is a bunch of big dumb guys punching the crap out of stuff. And with Polnareff, he's literally that dude. He's just not brilliant. He's vain. He's kind of dumb. And his Stan's ability is literally just stabbing things. I mean, everybody else has all these brilliant and interesting powers, and he's kind of this just thuggy doofus, you know? That, and he's, I don't want to say stereotypically French, he's strangely French. When everybody else is, like he's got,
He's based off of a French singer.
yeah, that's kind of what I thought, is a lot of stuff in JoJo's is based off of, like, music references. And so I kind of figured he was probably based off a dude named, like, probably Polnareff would be my guess.
Yes.
Yeah.
Michael Polnareff.
Is that it? Okay, that explains a lot. To give you an idea, everyone out there in TV land, the main villain for multiple series is named Dio, and for heavy metal fans, yes, that Dio, the heavy metal guy, is directly who he is named after. So there's a lot of musical references in it, and with
Yes, Michael Polnareff, French singer, songwriter, popular in France from the mid-60s until the early 90s, with his last original album, Polnareff.
wow.
That is a picture of him.
Oh, and he does not have giant tubular French hair like this Polnareff does. What a shame.
The genres are folk rock, psychedelic pop, and jazz rock.
Nice. And somehow, absolutely nothing like the JoJo's Polnareff. That guy sounds like he's, got some tact. This Polnareff does not. Yeah, it's actually why I kind of just really enjoyed this character, is because they kept putting him in, which is what most of JoJo's is, characters being put into situations in which their abilities do not allow them to properly fight, Eating toast. And so Polnareff would inevitably be put into a situation where his high-speed, stabby, silver chariot powers don't mean anything. And he would always get beaten up, torn up, partially eaten at one point, which was awesome.
And constantly getting farted in the face by the dog.
This is true, that's right. One of the other characters was a dog, Iggy. And Iggy didn't like him at all. They didn't like each other, actually. And that dog would just keep farting right in his face, over and over and over. I'm not saying it's a brilliant series. I'm saying it's an entertaining series.
It's fun.
It's what it's meant to be. It's a fun series. And there's actually, I take that back. There's moments where they do kind of brilliant, sort of crazy stuff. But it's really all in the name of having fun,
Very inventive.
That's literally why I really like JoJo's. Is a lot of people are like, you take that seriously? I'm like, I don't take it seriously. It's really creative. That's what I love about JoJo's. I could probably, if I really wanted to, write down a list of a general description of every single battle, and one or two of them would be, this guy punched that guy, out of probably 70, 80 some conflicts so far that I've seen. They'll end with somebody getting punched, but there's all this crazy madness that goes on just to get to that point. I almost did Bastet, and she was one of the villains. And I loved Bastet. It's kind of a shame that Bastet didn't survive. To give you an idea of how, his is really kind of typical powers, being creating a knight that would come out and stab people. Hers, the thing that she would create wasn't like a character. I swear to God, it was an Egyptian electrical outlet. No joke. It's literally what she created. And she would have to trick people, because it doesn't move or anything, to come up and get near the electrical outlet so it would zap them. Mm-hmm. And then once they were zapped, that didn't even really, it would kind of hurt, but it wasn't a big deal. And then it was That was weird. I mean, it wasn't even like people would necessarily think it was anything at all. And then, as long as she stayed within a couple thousand feet of them over the next couple days, a magnetic charge would build in their body exponentially over days. So the next morning, the main characters would like wake up and there's like paper clips stuck to them. By the end of that day, cars are sliding at them and trucks are crushing them, and it was a ridiculous amount of fun, because you were just sitting back the whole time going like, your punchy stabby powers don't mean anything now, do they? Because like everything is just like manhole covers are coming up out of the street and flipping at you. My favorite is like two guys got stuck together magnetically and they couldn't get themselves apart until they discovered that they have north and south poles and that they could invert their bodies and fly apart, which was going to look really bad in Egypt where homosexuality was illegal. And they were like, but we'll get hanged if we invert our bodies in public. It's one of those series that it's why I liked him, because they literally went, we need a lunkhead that keeps getting that keeps getting hurt, because no matter what he does, his honorable, manly, straightforward stand up and fight-emism doesn't mean jack, you know. And I find that very refreshing in a genre which is based off of the concept of stand up and fight, and then they punch each other in the Iron Man boobs, and they growl a lot and sweat and blood running from their mouths and blah blah blah, which is all fun. Don't get me wrong. I've seen some stories where that's actually a lot of fun, but with him, it's almost like they were making fun of it, which was awesome, you know? And then he would get into real conflicts where he would really get to fight and stuff, but most of the time this poor dude just kept getting it, you know? Make sure there you go. I think I might have made his hair a little too tall. That's okay, I always loved him with the crazy tall hair. I've actually come to the conclusion, I'm fairly certain he's where Guile came from. They just spread his hair out in Guile's form. I mean, can you see it?
I think. What came first?
I believe the manga of JoJo's came first. I believe. Though I would not put money on that. It's not like I'm an expert or anything. I think that's how it went, though. Well, I believe JoJo's came out about the same time as Fists, and that was early 80s. And then the Capcom stuff, I think, it was like 90s. Late 80s at best. And we got like Final Fight and stuff. I mean, that was clearly the same kind of design lineage.
Yeah, but Street Fighter itself was early 90s.
And it wouldn't surprise me if the guys that did Street Fighter were taking notes off of the boys' comic designs. I mean, that to me just sounds like the first place they would go to for inspiration. So. Yeah. And another reason why I like Polnareff is they gave him, which was great, this great identifiable silhouette. And it's because of that like can head that he had. They not only gave him a very straight, tall head, they gave him a very straight, tall haircut on top of it, and then they, cut the top off. Completely flat, which almost was never mussed up anywhere in the series. A couple times, but most of the time it just remained in like this perfect, pristine can of soup configuration. Yeah, I'll probably do some more JoJo's characters in the future. It's a series that I really like. I mean, it really addresses the superpower stuff in a way that I'm actually kind of mad that America does not. We kind of really did this amazing thing with American comics, where it's this superpower versus this superpower. But then we always ended up getting down to the dumbest level of it, like, who would win, Superman or the Hulk? Whose punch is stronger? I don't care. I literally don't care. That is the dumbest thing I have ever heard. Who cares who punches harder? And that's the dumbest superpower. No, it is. I mean, I'm sorry if someone's like not happy to hear that. It's stupid. There's nothing interesting like completely different ones. Like, we'll just do something obvious. Like, well, the Flash is really fast. What if the Flash fought Batman? That's at least a more interesting conversation. And I know that conversation does occur, but then it's always left to, people waving their team flags going like, Team Batman, Team Flash, and then they don't actually discuss why the conflict would be interesting. With JoJo's, that's the point of the series, is they went, oh no, this time we have let me pick something. We have a woman with lethal iron strangulation hair versus a kid who can bring comic book sound effects to life. And that was, by the way, an actual conflict in the series. And you would watch it going like, well, how does that work? And then they came up with a really interesting conflict, and it was really fun to watch because you had that big question in your head going like, wait, how does that work? Who would win that? Like, 'cause it's so strange. Like Bastet with her ability to make people magnetic. It wasn't like Magneto. It was her power was completely different, but was a magnetic power. And then one of my favorite bits is the guys finally cornered her, and they got away from a lot of metal stuff so they could actually fight. And what I loved, it was the most manically ridiculous thing to watch. But then you were like, wait, this makes sense. I can see why she would do this. Her brassiere started just like inflating and then like pointing at them, and then when their magnetic field got strong enough, it exploded open. She had packed her underwear with nuts, bolts, and screws so they would get peppered like a shotgun shell. And I was like watching that, my mouth hanging open, going like, that is not only amazing and crazy and insane, but it makes sense. Like, you go like, if I had magnetic powers, I would probably do something similar, perhaps with something a little more male-oriented. Like, just saying. I mean, it's stunningly entertaining because you're like, wait, what did they just do? Right on. That's cool. That's thinking outside the box. With America, it ends up with this dumb, her punch is harder. I don't care. I mean, there was only a handful of conflicts in JoJo's that had anything to do with punching, and it was usually the end of the fight was they finally got up to the person who was able to physically hit them to knock them out or kill them. And usually it was they were trying to navigate around all the really bizarre powers. Like there was one guy, his only ability was to steal your soul if he won a bet. That was it. And so he became an unbelievable con man to win bets, and then would steal people's souls and then hang it over their heads. So the next big guy that came up is like, give me my friend back. He's like, no, got your friend's soul. What are you going to do? You going to punch me? You're going to lose your friend. And then the next guy would have to throw a bet and lose his soul, and then the next guy would have to lose a bet, and it was fun. And then it turned from these big, muscly, sweaty, knuckle-pounding guys into dudes that have to use their heads.
Yeah, cerebral fights as opposed to physical fights. Yeah.
And it was so good because you found out stuff about characters. Like Polnareff was terrible in this conflict because all he knew how to do was really attack people. And it was the other characters that had to step in and go like, ho, stop. We're all dead if you do that. We have to go in and think about how to beat this guy. I'm not saying this is a brilliant show. I'm just saying that the one thing that was really good about it was you were like, oh, well, what are they going to do this time? It's not like it didn't have ridiculous fights and manly man moments and all the typical boys cartoon stuff. It always had that stuff, but it's like you would actually have to think about what was occurring in the fight. Like, if I'm going to see a fight, I want to see something interesting. I don't want to see two dudes hitting each other. That's boring.
It depends on it. Depends. It
Well,
goes both ways.
yeah, but if that's all it is just two guys hitting each other, that's what I'm saying, is that's boring. Like I've seen Justice League Unlimited did really good stuff with fights where it was in essence guys just hitting each other, but then they would go in and there was story and there was things going on and blah blah blah, and that worked. That was really good. They did it right. It's just that JoJo's it's like this, the foundation of the series just seemed to be how bizarre and messed up can we make almost everything, and then
Well, it is in the name.
oh, it is. No doubt. I mean, no doubt. I mean, that clearly. But that strangeness, made it do crazy stuff. My favorite villains, I think, of all time were the omnipotent organisms, which were like ancient, highly evolved humans that had complete control over their anatomies. One of which digested other people through his skin. So he would attack them just by affectionately hugging them and then dissolving them into himself. If that wasn't messed up enough, he dissolved half a dude at one point in time, like right down the middle. The other half was still laying there, and one of the heroes, I swear to God, walked up to him, held up half a body, which somehow was still alive, and held half a body, having a manly man crying moment, saying it was going to be okay, with half a body. And we're not talking like the upper half. We're talking like the right half of his body, like half of his head too, like one half. And I'm like watching it going like, that is some messed up stuff.
And don't forget, Iggy had a stand, the dog. Also, don't forget, the orangutan who had a stand.
Oh yeah. Yeah, there were animal heroes in the series that literally were animals with superpowers. So good. In some cases, really bizarre powers, too. Some of the conflicts were funny. Some of them were dark and dangerous. Most of them were dark and dangerous. Handful of them were square out disturbing. One specifically I can think of that I was actually uncomfortable for the grand bulk of the fight, but also completely committed to the story. Actually involving Polnareff. He was on the receiving end of one of the most disturbing villains. This dude, his powers, seriously, he had a cycloptic shadow that would just flow across the ground stuff, and if it tagged you, you started regressing back to like your 6-year-old self, and not like your brain staying an adult, like you being your 6-year-old self with the phantom memories that you were in a dangerous conflict but not really knowing what to do. / he is also a dude who enjoys torturing and murdering children. And so Polnareff was regressed back to like a child trying to escape from essentially a psychopath who wanted to enjoy murdering him. It was dark. I mean, it was like really crazy. But then you actually got to see Polnareff, which was actually the moment where he had to be clever. And it was really like he discovered his cleverness was childish cleverness. He was like apparently quite a scamp as a little kid, a little troublemaker, and he was able to take advantage of his childish cleverness, which was the only thing that saved his life. That was such a good conflict. That was one of those ones where I was literally going like Run, little dude! Oh my God, run! Don't fight that! You don't want to fight that! What was really insane was this lady finds him partway through the conflict, thinks he's a lost child, takes him into her home to take care of him, and the psycho follows into the house. She don't know what's going on. He's not 100% sure exactly what's going on, other than this horrible person is chasing him, and he doesn't even remember people's names and stuff, like, so he can't even call his friends. And he even ran into one of them, and the guy didn't even recognize him because he was a little kid. And this was the moment where I was just like, I threw my hands up and went, who are you to have written this? The guy tags the old lady with, like, the age regression thing all the way down to an embryo this big. And so Polnareff, as a little kid, is running around the house with a towel with this embryo in it. And I am just sitting there going like, oh my God. You know, and I mean, it was like the most disturbing thing I've ever seen them do. And then you get these crazy conflicts where it's all like a big funny joke. You know, and legitimately very funny, very silly. So that's what I love about JoJo's. You're never entirely sure where you're going to be in a conflict. And it's so interesting when you can't ever really properly guess. That's so good. I love that. I mean, there's one of my favorite conflicts because it was executed so well. He was in it, but he failed. He was not one of the ones that figured it out. They were crossing a desert. It's in Stardust Crusaders. They're crossing a desert, and they're on I think they're on camel or horseback. I can't remember which one. But they've been just going and going and going, and they're all exhausted, and they all kept looking up at the sun, going like, "What time is it? Why shouldn't it be dark by now?" And one of them looks at their watch and goes like, "Yeah, the sun should have set 40 minutes ago." And the sun's like still straight up in the sky. And it keeps getting hotter and hotter and hotter. And they suddenly discovered that for hours they had been under attack by an enemy stand user that was somehow attacking them with the sun, but they couldn't quite figure it out. So they created this giant earth mound to get underneath it to protect them from all the sunlight. And they're looking out this tiny hole out onto this oven-baked desert that keeps getting hotter. And their shelter is turning into an oven and is baking them alive. And they can't locate this guy to kill him or knock him out to stop him. And I loved this conflict. I thought this was so good. And so finally, one guy goes unconscious. He's not dead, but he's hurting real bad. He's unconscious. He's all sweating. And then one character starts laughing completely out of their skull. Then another one. And then the one guy who thinks he has it all together, he's like, "I gotta save everybody. One guy's down. Two have completely lost their minds." And then one of the laughing guy goes, no. He's like, "I figured it out. It's like, "Look, you see that rock right there?" He's like, "Yeah." "You see there's the identical rock over there but flipped the other way?" He's like, "Yeah, no, you're right." And so the guy gets out, he steps out into the blazing sun, just picks a rock up and throws it. And then this whole section of the desert just cracks and shatters. And then he walks over, and there was the enemy stand user behind a mirror 30 feet from them. And he had a little air conditioner and an iced tea. And it hit him square in the head and knocked him out. The sun went and disappeared, and it was nighttime. And it was literally like this fat guy in like a lawn chair with an air conditioner and an iced tea behind a mirror, baking them with the sun. I was laughing so hard because it was wonderfully ridiculous. And it was you just didn't understand what was happening. Like the main characters were totally in danger and it was a real threat. Until one of them spotted the fact that one of the rocks outside was flipped the wrong direction 30 feet away and was like, "Okay, all right, there's a mirror out there. Somebody's hiding behind a mirror reflecting the desert like an old magician's trick." God, so good. and it was a funny ending, but the whole actual watching of the conflict was really stressful. I mean, it was really like ugly and characters not knowing what to do and this and that and blah blah blah, and it was so good, and it was just some dude with an air conditioner and a mirror, making a gigantic, being like a 300-foot diameter sun that was floating up in the sky, baking them to death. But, and then you get the crazy stuff with like him getting turned into a kid and getting chased by a psychopath. And I mean, this is not a little kid series, but I would call it a young teen series. I mean, there's some stuff in it where you're like, wow, okay.
The guy who gets his head pulled off into a canteen.
Oh yeah, it's actually one of my favorite conflicts. They end up fighting this one dude in the desert that controlled a gallon of water, and this water was jumping in and out of the sand, like mangling them. And one of the dudes looked into a canteen, and the water came out of the canteen, grabbed his face, and sucked his whole head into the canteen, and everybody dove, screaming, "Enemy stand user!" And there's just a canteen sitting there with it all inflated and huge, and all these big muscled dudes sitting behind a dune staring at this guy going like, what do we do? That's what I loved about JoJo's, is these great, what do? We don't even understand what we're fighting moments. See, that's the thing, is when you've got like, and I'll just use Dragon Ball Z, and actually Fist falls into this too. Quite typically, you have an enemy where you go, he's some kind of a blank fighter. Actually, Naruto not so much did this. Naruto actually had enough crazy powers in it that you sometimes didn't know what was going on. But like in Fist, most of the time it was just a dangerous martial artist of some kind. And in Dragon Ball Z, it was another alien that punches really fast and moves real quick and throws energy. Sometimes with interesting other powers. I think one of them turned people into chocolate, if I remember correctly. But you kind of knew, we're going to have to outfight this guy. We're going to have to out-something this guy, involving typically a fight. In JoJo's, they quite often didn't even know if they were supposed to run away. Like and there were villains in the series where it was just a good idea if they didn't fight them at all. I mean, there was a number of them that were so dangerous that that main characters died, never came back, died. One character had a heroic death, not defeating the guy, and I loved this. Just sending a message as to what this dude's powers actually was. Dying just to find out what it was this guy did that was killing people, and sent a message at the last second so everyone else could hopefully survive the next conflict. And I was like, that was cool. I was like, and you felt for the guy, because you were kind of like, what a smart thing to do, or else everyone else was gonna steadily get picked off by this dude. By the way, being Dio, the main villain. There was one guy, his ability was to create a stand that was in the size of a human cell. So you couldn't even see his power. And he would just fly the thing into you and then have it get inside of your brain and start rewiring you. I mean, how messed up is that? He was doing things like shutting people's hearts off. And they would kind of keep these really basic, simple rules in the series, which was nice, and they stayed consistent, which was good. One of which being is the more powerful your stand is, the closer it has to be to the person that's using it, because they can only project their power out so far. With this guy, his stand was so weak that he could project it out like 5 miles. So he was off in like another town turning people's hearts off. Which was like, which was really kind of cool, because it was to my recollection, the only character that had any kind of a power like that. And so the main characters had no clue how to fight him. You know, as a matter of fact, they didn't even know what was going on for a really long time, other than people were dying, and they couldn't stop it. So yeah, it was just a fun series. The thing is, I don't ever want to judge other people's stuff, but I've just got things that I kind of have to have in a series for me to enjoy it. And it doesn't even have to be brilliant. Just give me stuff where I'm like, I can't see stuff coming. You know, I got some variety going on. The characters are fun. Like this dude, he got caught in a hotel room by himself. And the enemy stand was a tiny doll that was running around in the hotel room, messing him up with a knife. And again, it doesn't sound like that big of a deal, except that this like 6.5 foot tall muscle French fighter guy is just getting taken down by a doll. And so it gets to the point where he finally hides under the bed so he can kind of see it coming, so he can kind of look around and just be worried about what was on the horizon and not what was above him and below him, because it kept hitting him from these angles that he wasn't quite, you know, seeing. So he got under the bed. So the little devil doll grabbed a hold of like a lot of liquor and stuff from the minibar, poured it on the bed, and set the bed on fire and waited for him to come out. And then then a waiter shows up to deliver room service and like knocking, and he can't get out from underneath the bed because of the evil doll. And so this guy opens the door, and the doll just murders this dude and pulls him into the room. And the whole time the Frenchman's going like, I don't want room service! Go away, you're going to die! It's fun. I just enjoy the series. I can't wait for the next season to be to air in Japan so I can watch it. Don't open the door! And like the room service guy's like, what? What do you mean? Then the doll gets him in the neck with a knife. You're like, I think one of the things I can positively say about Polnareff that I thought was cool was he firmly believed in chivalry and honor, even though he was kind of a douche. You know? He firmly believed in it, and if I recall correctly, he never broke that in the entire series. He always stuck with, no, this is the way, you know, this is the way you're supposed to act, this is the way you're supposed to fight. And that's actually why he was at such a disadvantage all the time. He was fighting everything that wasn't traditional, you know. And I thought that was a really good kind of shtick for the character, being like, he was sort of his own, he was his own reason why he you know, kept getting messed up. Because his idealisms would not allow him to fight dirty, or, you know, which was kind of funky in a way. Because you kind of know people like that, where you're like, you know, you're making your life harder for yourself. I mean, I'm not saying your idealisms are bad. I'm just saying maybe you put it on pause for a second. You know, maybe you shouldn't do that. You know, I'm just saying. We've known a couple guys like that. We're like, really, dude? Nah.
It's okay
Well, it's not only not be a douche, but like, you're sure your idealism's like, and I'm not even talking like big broad ones, like just be a good guy. I'm talking like weird little ones, like the kind of stuff you would do in junior high school, not like the big lessons, like be a good person, blah. But the weird rules, like don't date any girl that your friends dated, and then they would just completely like.
You say screw it and do it.
Well, no, that's what I'm saying is that they would be like, well, no, you can't date her, I dated her. And then now dudes are having problems with each other because, well, it's like, I dated her once, I took her out to McDonald's, now you can never ever get to know her. Which is weird. Like I've just known guys like that where you're like, really? So basically you're saying that if you went out every day and dated one woman for 3 straight years, that's better than 1,000 women, I would never be allowed ever to talk to any of them. I've just known guys like that where you're like, that is just so bizarre. Like, and that's kind of how Polnareff was. Things got to be this way, and blah blah. And the whole time you're kind of going like, does it?
Their own version of bro code. Yeah.
Oh, bro. Yeah, I think that's what it is. Like bro code. So ridiculous, freaking. Bro code. Oh, hey, Brandon. The name of this anime, JoJo's Bizarre Adventures. This is from the 3rd series called Stardust Crusaders. This is a character called Polnareff. He's like one of my favorite dinguses. He's a complete dingus. But he's like a really fun dingus. It's the only way I know how to put it. He's a dingus, If you haven't watched JoJo's, you might want to give it a shot. It's a bunch of fun. It's ridiculous and crazy and full of action and overly manly men doing overly manly things. All of which being spectacularly dressed, wearing truly absurd jewelry and adornments. For example, Polnareff's ridiculous half-heart-shaped earrings that he wears. I don't even begin to understand why he has them. No, wait, I think maybe his sister gave them to him. Like there might be maybe a story behind them, but they're truly ridiculous. Actually, he's not even remotely the tackiest person on the show. I still say my favorite moment, and I say this to everybody that I describe it to, and some people go, and I'm like, no, this is why it's kind of amazingly ridiculous, because it's one of the reasons why I watch it, not because I get off on this, but because you end up going like, it just adds to the strangeness of the show. There's just random homoeroticism for no apparent reason, which is so funny. Like at one point in time, they walk up to a door, and somebody's about to no, like door knob, no, like gonna open it. Then one guy goes, no, don't open the door, and they back off, and somebody goes, I think there's somebody inside the door. Okay, not behind the door, in the door, and then the door explodes open, and there's a half-naked, beautiful, muscled vampire in like Speedo bikini just jumps out of the door at them, and the whole time you're going like, put on some pants, like the whole time. Like it's just, I'm just giggling the whole time because it's so ridiculous and so goofy, and you're like, why would you do that? And yet it adds to the show because you're just going like, why? Like 3 of the baddest villains in the whole series is the Omnipotent Organisms. It's the 2nd series with Joseph Joestar. And these are the prettiest, tallest, muscled, most nakedest dudes you could find, always posing in like pink and cyan outfits and stuff. You're just going like, you're just, I mean, it gets to the point where you just accept it. And you're just going like, well, for example, like I said earlier, one of their powers is digesting people through his skin. So it just adds to the weirdness of every. By the way, that same guy crawled into someone's leg. As in, he entirely crawled entirely into entirely someone's leg. And I don't even know how to explain to people how really ridiculous and insane that is if they can't get it just from hearing the description. And so you got a beautiful man that's half naked in, like, I want to say he had like red Speedos or something, crawling into a dude's leg. And you're like, I did not plan to watch this today. I never did I wake up and think that I would have ever had the description in my head that I am going to watch a beautiful homoerotic man in a pair of Speedos crawl into another man's leg on my TV screen today. I mean, this is after that same guy climbed into, I swear to God, a Nazi stormtrooper, wore him like a suit. This show is so insanely, wonderfully over the top and crazy and like, oh, it's so good. Then like the Nazi officer spins and goes like, like, blow him down, you know. And then like all the other stormtroopers come in with like the old German grease guns, like, you know, and just pump the giant messy man suit pretty boy thing full of lead. And then it's all getting like hit and shot and like blood's going everywhere, and they're like, we got him, and then it just stops, and then it kind of like shifts around, and then it just starts spitting bullets out of its flesh at them and takes the whole unit down. And I'm going like, I'm sorry, that's entertaining. That's insanely crazy. It's really nuts. It's wonderfully entertaining. And I don't get why anyone would deny me that ridiculously crazy joy. Because it is. I'm not saying it's not ridiculous, but it's also done like with a straight face, which is why it is so good. Because if you were just sitting there doing, like turn to the camera and winking, it'd just be like, it wouldn't even be cool. It'd be like, this is stupid. Yeah. But they're like straight faced the whole time, like total melodrama. Like they're like, I can't believe that guy just climbed into that dude's leg. Like. Actually, no one even said anything. It was this wonderful escape as this thing was trying to get out of the sun and inside this dude. And I think he even took over the guy's body and was like forcing him to drag himself and his leg full of a beautiful bikini-clad dude out into the sun so the guy could get away into, like, I think it was a water well or something. And you were just like, the whole time you're like, don't let him get away. Split open that guy's leg. Let the sun kill the villain. And then you think to yourself, I was not planning on having those thoughts today. Which is why it's awesome. Good series. How long have I been going?
I've been going for 49 minutes.
Oh, right on. I'll clean it up then and we'll wrap things up. Excuse me. Not a perfect job, but I think that's pretty good. Let me see here. Yeah, it's pretty good. Brandon, I will respond to you when the transmission is over. All right. Everyone have a good week. I think that turned out well. Let me do my Mr. Rogers bit. Put my stuff away. Clean my things up. Probably put a sweater on. Change my shoes. Blah, blah, blah. Anywho, everyone have a good week. We'll catch you next time. And hope everyone has a good one.